What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my F122 MyTeam career mode. Well, this is episode 8 and we are heading into the Canadian Grand Prix in this episode as we come off of a very disappointing 2 rounds both in Monaco and in Azerbaijan around Baku. That was a very tough day at the office, and we are hoping for a nice turnaround as we head across the pond to Canadian soil in Montreal as we try to once again do our best to take this big boat of a MyTeam car around the Villeneuve circuit, I believe is how you say it. Probably wrong, but we are heading into our Pirelli Hot Lap Autocross challenge to try and get a bit of money as well as some driver acclaim for free. Now, this autocross is something that I need to talk about because it is absolutely one of my least favorite of the Pirelli Hot Lap challenges. But with that said, it is also probably one of the best ones for me personally to work on because it's pretty obvious that I need to continue to work on my car control in this game, not only in supercars but as well as the F1 cars. So this one really makes you think about the corners, braking, turning in, really setting the car up before you acceleration, and so it is definitely something that I need to continue to work on. But while we continue to let this autocross play out, let's talk about what we need to work on going forward and clean up some little to-do items. So one, this episode, like the previous episode, is before the 1.06 patch came out for the game, and so unfortunately we will not see the benefits of that patch. But starting in the next episode, we will see the benefits of the new updated patch, as well as some updates that you may notice in this episode as well. But starting with Canada and starting in episode 9, I am going to start to try and use less assists in this game. So currently I am running the full traction control as well as ABS, along with the racing line in the corners only, as well as not personally doing the ERS and DRS deploy. And starting from here, I want to try and continue to work on those skills to handle those myself, because I believe I mentioned it in the last episode, I have a wheel and pedal setup coming in that I'm hoping to do all of those functions on that wheel itself. And so I want to try and start getting in the habit of, you know, pushing those buttons, getting those timings in, as well as shifting, which will potentially come in a later episode. But as we clearly have moved forward on to qualifying, it is a wet day around the Canadian Grand Prix circuit, trying to do our best to qualify as best we can, following around the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll here on our last qualifying lap. We currently sit in P16, which would definitely be one of our best qualifiers to date. Who knows, we may be some wet weather qualifying specialists, or it could just be that the other cars around the circuit have yet to really truly set their best time. But nonetheless, we are going to continue around qualifying. I don't believe the race was set for wet weather, so I think this is definitely going to be a qualifying only thing. So hopefully we get some dry weather for the race and they finally can get some positive momentum. I believe this feels like something I say every episode, but we really just need some positive momentum for our team as we will come home to cross the line about 2 seconds clear of our delta. Actually almost 2.25 seconds clear on our delta, and our final qualifying place is P19. So our good fortune is not to be. Taking a look at the final lineup, we have Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and George Russell making up the top 3. Fernando Alonso makes his way into the second row, and actually Fittipaldi coming home to finish in P16. So if we were doing the full qualifying, he would be there. So let's head and get ready for this Canadian Grand Prix.
Here in Montreal, the second largest French-speaking city in the world, and home since 1978 to the Canadian Grand Prix. It's a tricky circuit to tackle in wet conditions, with top speed still of critical importance down the long back straight. There are 2.7 miles and 14 corners overall on this circuit that in the dry can see average lap speeds of around 130 miles per hour. We'll be lucky to get anywhere near that today. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Russell, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon and Ricciardo, Vettel, Stroll, Norris and Valtteri Bottas, Mick Schumacher, Magnussen, Yuki Tsunoda and Latifi, Fittipaldi, Joe, Charles Leclerc and the rookie, Gasly, they've taken a grid penalty, Sainz, Albon and Sergio Perez completes our grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Natalie.
As we line up for our formation lap, we can see that we actually end up moving up 1 position to P18 with Sergio Perez taking an engine penalty, grid penalty. He will start officially at the back. So as we line up, we actually see that unfortunately this will be a wet weather start to this Canadian Grand Prix, but the weather forecast does predict that it will dry up and we will get to see the dry tires and the slicks come out. So fortunately it won't be a long day, another long day around the F1 circuit like we saw in Monaco. Hopefully we can also avoid the troubles we saw in Baku, where we just really truly struggled to keep our consistency up, and we will do our best to set some decent pace and try not to fall too far off the pack, which we have been wont to do so far. So as the grid comes to completion, it's weird seeing a Red Bull at the back, but as we see the grid come to a form, we will see the 5 red lights and we will be underway in Canada. And there we are, lights out, and we are away in the Canadian Grand Prix as we get an absolutely horrific start, and we find ourselves immediately right at the back as we send one up right down the inside. We get bump wheels with Pierre Gasly. We take a look around the outside. We're trying to follow our teammate Fittipaldi around the outside, and we find ourselves behind the Ferrari of Leclerc. But once again, the other cars just seem to have just a different level of pace than we do, even in the wet. Even the Williams of Nicholas Latifi finding itself in front of us, but we have made our way forward up into P17. As we make our way, we can take a big lunge down the inside. We kind of get a little risky taking the inside of the Alpha Tower of Yuki Tsunoda. I'm sure he does not appreciate us kind of riding him along the inside. Probably could have left that one for the future, and he is sure to let us know how he feels about it as he tries to close the door on us on the outside, as we will follow Charles Leclerc into the inside as he's actually battling our teammate and potentially going 3 wide with the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. As we move forward up into lap 2, you can actually see that the weather is starting to shift and we are starting to see the rain start to lessen as we are fighting the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, following our teammate Enzo Fittipaldi around, currently sitting in P15. Now, this is one of the few opportunities where we get to actually compete and defend against the Ferraris, as in the wet, it is kind of the great equalizer, and even in our position of a less than skillful driver as well as a less than performative car. But with that said, we have successfully defended off Carlos Sainz down to a clear of a gap of about a second there it was before we jump forward to lap 7 here. Carlos Sainz has gone and left us in the dust, and at this point we are taking a look at the weather, and we are going to make a bit of a gamble here. As we currently sit in P16, we are going to head in nice and early to potentially try and undercut the weather a little bit and potentially come out on the slicks before everyone else starts to make their way in. Unfortunately, while we are setting that up, we actually run a bit wide coming out of into the long right-hander hairpin, and we are making our way back down this back straight towards the pits, hopefully. And it seems like we were unfortunately a little too late to try our bit of an undercut move, as it seems like a lot of this section of the grid is making their way into the pits to switch onto these slicks now that the circuit is drying up. So unfortunately we are going to have to get a bit of a double stack here as Fittipaldi comes in well before us. It looks like he had to fix a bit of damage in there before he could get those tires switched in on his way. So we will come out with a nice 2.1 second pit stop, which is something we need to keep going with in the future, especially as our car continues to develop. Good pit stops are definitely the key to succeeding in the long run in Formula 1. So we do come out towards the back of the grid, or in the back of the grid I should say, currently sitting in P22. But that said, there are a few up ahead of us who have yet to pit, and so we are going to have to try and do our best to not get left in the absolute dust by the two Williams ahead of us as we try and warm up these cold, wet, medium tires. So this is where, unfortunately, we are going to see a bit of a theme and kind of the catalyst for my decision to try and start working on playing without as many assists on. I believe that since it was still in the wet, the traction control was really holding me back from trying to really accelerate out of corners and really just letting the AI kind of pull away from me in the long run. As we move forward now in a bit of a drastic jump to lap 14, the beginning of lap 14 here, as we are trying to once again make our way up behind the Williams of Alex Albon in a bright and sunny day in Canada here now. It looks like the TP pits for damage, as well as Sergio Perez probably also pitting for damage. Unfortunate for him as we make up a couple of places here, but that will, a bit of foreshadowing that will not last for too long as we continue to struggle with this car. I think this is just a theme that we are currently having to deal with, of our feel for the car. The car is bad. The car is not the best car that we'll ever drive around Formula 1, hopefully for the foreseeable future going into the future seasons. But I think this is definitely a bit of a driver error session as we try to make our way around Canada, taking suboptimal lines and truly not taking advantage of mistakes made by the AI or really putting any pressure on them, to say the least. And so this is something that we need to continue to work on, putting ourselves in position to take advantage and not putting ourselves at a disadvantage early on and trying to play catch up. As you can see there, our underbody has taken quite the beating, and we are truly starting to feel the effects of that as the Red Bull of Sergio Perez finally makes his way around us. A bit of a inconvenience more than a roadblock, and we will be following him for the foreseeable future, as the only car behind us now is the Williams of Nicholas Latifi. And I feel as if we continue to drive as we have been for the last episode and the last few races, it will not be long until he is hot on our trail as we pass near the halfway point of this race. As we start lap 17 here, we are going to continue to try and push and do our best to hold on to the back of the pack here and try not to get left too far in the dust. But unfortunately, once again, just unable to get on the power out of the corner and trying taking a smooth line. We truly just kind of get bogged down with suboptimal lines and suboptimal releases, and trying to make up for that and forcing it in there just doesn't do it for us as we wear out our tires even faster and continue to lose grip and time. The underbody damage is also something that has been a theme the past few races, and it's something we definitely need to be working on going into the future, as Mick Schumacher actually ends up dropping out of the Canadian Grand Prix. Unfortunate for the young driver in the Haas, but I guess you could say fortunate for us, we will not be finishing last here as we enter this long hairpin here. We will pass Schumacher, who has unfortunately finished his day in Montreal. As you can see there on the left in the deltas, that Nicholas Latifi in the Williams continuing to chip away at our lead on the only car who's left so running in our race, to say the least, as Albon and Tsunoda are quickly leaving us behind. Moving forward here into lap 28, you can actually see that at this point we actually suffered a bit of damage in a fight with Latifi, and I had to pit for damage, and we find ourselves well behind the pack, a full almost 18 seconds off of the back of the pack, and we have actually been passed by the front portion of the grid, and we are definitely feeling our face flush with slight embarrassment as we once again find ourselves being lapped by the leaders as we get a full safety car deploy here. And this is a bit of a embarrassing one for me, because as we stand right now, we will be lining up behind the leaders, and we try to take advantage of this by getting some fresh tires on. And in a moment of lacking in common sense and reasoning, we try and take advantage of the safety car to catch back up to the back of the grid by pitting, and in my infinite wisdom, thinking that by pitting here we would get to thinking it would unlap us at this point, and we would catch up to the rear rather than the other way around. So we will eventually pit, come out well behind, a full lap down, and finish the Canadian Grand Prix in last by multiple laps almost of the leaders, and a full lap down from the entire rest of the grid. So I bring it up here as we watch the safety car queue forming up, and it is going to end our day in Canada extremely low note, and we will definitely have to work on ourselves both mentally, because we have a long way to go both in the skill department as well as in the car department. So we are doing our best, and the team morale is definitely going to take a large hit in this one, but nonetheless we are here for the long run. We know that there are better days ahead. And as we come through what should be to start our last lap, unfortunately, since we are a lap down, we will come home and watch Lewis Hamilton win the Canadian Grand Prix, and we will finish one lap down on the rest of the grid, and we will come home in P21, only beating the DNF of Mick Schumacher. An unfortunate and embarrassing day for our team, but we know that at this point it can only go up from here. We will try and come back stronger. Congratulations to Charles Leclerc on his driver of the day. This has been a rough one, as the Mercedes garage gets to celebrate Lewis Hamilton winning the Canadian Grand Prix. I believe that looks to be Max Verstappen in second place, and the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, or it looks like, it's hard to tell. I couldn't catch the number on the Ferrari, so we will see which of the Scuderia drivers stands atop the podium in this one here in a second as they take the podium. But congratulations to Lewis Hamilton once again on his victory in Canada. I'm curious to see where Fittipaldi ended up, because at this point we're kind of looking at Enzo to kind of get a gauge on where our car should be ending up, as our performance has definitely left us wanting more than not. So as Lewis raises the trophy, I forgot to look which of the Scuderia drivers finished on top, but congratulations to everyone on the podium, as it looks like Max does indeed come home to take second place in this one. I'm sure a champagne shower on a wet day in Canada would not be too appreciated in the long run, but it is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc taking his championship one step further. As we take a look at the final results, Daniel Ricciardo comes home fourth, and George Russell rounds out the top five. Carlos Sainz ends up taking sixth. The Brit and Lando Norris seventh. Bottas, Alonso, and actually Sebastian Vettel coming home to finish out the points places in P10. But for now, as we see our race finish here, we have a long way to go, and I'll see you guys in the next one.